Hi, this is the third video I'm going to milk out of my Q&A series for May this year. I think I might do this from now on. In the last week of every month, I'm going to do a whole Q&A thing. I really enjoy it. You seem to enjoy it. Let's keep this going. This last video has been one of the hardest ones to do. It's not because the topics are bad. In fact, I love the questions, but quite the reverse. Because I love the questions, because I have feelings about this, I've tended to get carried away. I'm going to work really hard on being restrained when I do the video this time. Maybe I'll be able to use it. Basically, the topics I'm going to cover are how we as watch enthusiasts kind of get played by the brands. And I really mean enthusiasts especially. And how the media that we would love to think is helping us out probably makes it worse. And how Tudor is a fantastic example of that. Let's get into it after the video. After the intro, sorry. Hi, I'm Pete McConville, and here I like to overthink, overanalyze, and basically just geek out on wristwatches far more than is healthy for a grown-up. If that sounds like something you're interested in, stick with me and we'll get through this together. Only 2 questions today, but they're really meaty ones I could really get my teeth into. I'm going to start with a question from Colin. It actually starts with a pretty easy, straightforward one, which is how do I watch social media progressing in the next few years? Frankly, Colin, I don't think I do see it progressing in the next few years. I feel like we're in a little bit of a rut at the moment. All the major players, all the dealers, all the enthusiasts like me sitting up in my upstairs bedroom, we've all kind of figured out our groove and we're doing our thing. I think the time is ripe for a change. I'm just not sure what that's going to be. So in the absence of being able to say what the change is going to be, and despite thinking that there does need to be one, Colin, I kind of fear that maybe there isn't a change coming for a little while. But then on the other hand, maybe that's why I'm stuck up in my bedroom doing these videos, and there's someone much smarter than me about to break the whole system open. Okay, so the easy question out of the way, let's get into the harder ones. Are we as watch buyers being persuaded by content producers to buy watches you don't really want? In a word, absolutely we are. We are being played like a really cheap piano. We are just getting monstered by the brands and the media that we would like to help us. This answer really starts with the media. And us as watch enthusiasts. Us as watch enthusiasts, we are the ones that go to the big websites and the big platforms like Hodinkee, Revolution, Monochrome, Fratello, all of those guys. So we are the ones who are sort of most victim to what they do to us. And here's the thing. Those guys are not staffed by professional media. They are not staffed by people who have been brought up and trained in and instilled with the disciplines of journalists. No, they're mostly ex-enthusiasts like us. They're quasi-professionals. That's why I've called them the enthusiast media. Not just because they talk to enthusiasts, but that they themselves are enthusiasts. That sounds great. That sounds like they're on our side. That sounds like they're part of us. And insofar as that's true, great, fantastic. But what it means is they have no discipline. They have no critical thinking. They don't challenge the brands. They cheer them on. They don't think of themselves as media or as journalists. So they never look back critically at what they're doing and ask themselves, are we balanced? Are we presenting a broader view of what's going on in the industry? Are we, sort of advancing the ball down the field? No, they just constantly say, and you hear them say it, we're not critical because we only review watches we like. We're authentic. We're reflecting what our preferences are. In other words, what they're saying is we're small-minded, we're not trying to grow, we're not actively searching out what we don't know, we're not actively searching out what isn't already a preference of ours. They are easy prey for a brand that's being run with a professional media system designed to play them and by extension us. And that is exactly what happens. That's if we're lucky. If we're lucky, they're being played just like we are. If we're unlucky, the media platforms are actually aiding and abetting knowingly what's going on with the dealers and the brands who are trying to play us all. Recently, Fratello called out a few mastheads. They called out Hodinkee and Monochrome and Revolution. And those three names are going to be a little bit of a theme today for doing exactly that, for running a bit of a game plan with brands like Gerald Genta, which is being reborn. What was the other one? Daniel Roth, which is being reborn. Frank Mueller, which people are trying to get going again. These three mastheads in particular seem to be running the brand playbook. About a year or so in advance of something being announced, you suddenly start seeing articles about this brand. You get this slow escalation of putting the brand and its watches in front of us, getting us ready for it, making us think about things we weren't previously thinking about, hyping us up, moving us forward. Then as the brand gets closer to being launched or gets closer to sort of their big announcement, the watch media start hyping up more and more. There's never any questioning about whether they should. There's never any warning to us of what's going on. They're just doing it. So if you look at the example that Fratello gave us, which was Daniel Roth and Hodinkee, for 10 years, nothing about Daniel Roth on Hodinkee. And then suddenly, in the last 6 months, something like 7 or 8 articles, telling us about all the things that Daniel Roth have done in the past. That's a pretty transparent game plan that's going on there. Bobby Leggs has just recently done a very similar video where he's looking at, funnily enough, Hodinkee again and what's going on with Shapiro and how some of the things that they're saying and the way they're pushing that brand might not be entirely true. And it's interesting to see very similar brands, very similar claims, very similar things being said over at Monochrome and Revolution, another two mastheads that seem to play this kind of game. And so now I want to touch on the last part of Colin's question, which is why do brands need to advertise when people like me, when YouTubers sitting in our bedrooms, seem quite happy to do the advertising on behalf of the brands themselves? Well, the truth is, the brands have been advertising. They've been advertising to those mastheads, to the enthusiast media that I was talking about. The problem for people like me is I don't have a direct relationship with a brand. They're not sending me press releases. They're not inviting me to go over to their new facilities. I only know a tiny little bit more than you do, Colin. And I really rely upon that enthusiast media to feed me. And the vast majority of other YouTubers are too. The vast bulk of other YouTubers do what I do. They have a Feedly scan, or they go to Watchanista, or they go to somewhere else and trawl what is Hodinkee and Monochrome and Fratello and Worn and Wound and Time and Tide. What are they saying? And then we pick through that. Some of us work really hard to analyze that critically, come up with our own thoughts, maybe go off and do some sort of pure research ourselves. Others don't. They just recycle what they're told. And so what you get from us YouTubers is kind of a distilled version, an amplified version of what the media what the brands paid for by injecting into the bigger mastheads. It just filtered down to us. Okay, so now I'm going to finish this up by going to the last question of today from RR_S, who says he's no Tudor hater, but what the hell's going on with all the love that Tudor gets? And the reason why I love that question is because it bolts straight onto the back of how brands play us to buy watches we don't really want. And Tudor is a great example of that game plan playing out. Remember that game plan I said, about a month or about a year or so before a brand is planning on doing something, they start seeding stories in the media. They get the media hyped. The media starts pumping us. We get primed for it. And then so on and so forth. Well, that's exactly what Tudor did. If you go back and you look at what happened in the early days, before Tudor was released, in the very early days, say 2009, 2010, no one spoke about Tudor. Go back to those three mastheads I spoke about before, Monochrome, Revolution, and Hodinkee. It's hard to find a single article ever about Tudor that, before that time. And then suddenly, out of the blue, it appears, and I'm going to focus on Hodinkee for the time being. Out of the blue, Hodinkee suddenly falls in love with Tudor. Shockingly, about a year before they're ready to start their launch. Suddenly, after never having covered them at all, there are 20 stories in about 12 months getting us ready, playing that game, the history of the brand, how important it was when they started, with the original Tudor Submariner. Oh, look at what they're doing over here and these new watches coming. Oh, in about a year, you're going to be seeing the Tudor Black Bay. Isn't it fantastic? And you can't wait to get this. Then as it's launching in America, then we get a dedicated channel firing up. Lo and behold, shared between Hodinkee and Tudor. Oh my God, this must have been so organic. They just found it because they're enthusiasts. Bull. You can see that game playing. And if you go have a look, you see similar things happening over on other websites. This was Tudor pumping those mastheads, probably with a whole bunch of resources, certainly with a whole bunch of information to prime us, to get us excited about, frankly, a brand which, a year before, no one gave a shit about. And that pumping of the enthusiast media and the enthusiast media's uncritical analysis of what they're doing, unthinking kind of just replication and response to the stories being, fed into them by the brand, continues on. It goes past that initial period. So let's look at the coverage that those three mastheads, Revolution, Hodinkee, Monochrome, give to Tudor compared to another brand that sits around about the same place as Tudor, does something kind of similar to Tudor. So I'm going to pick a brand I'm familiar with. So if you want to accuse me of favoritism, that's fine, or having an axe to grind, I can't say no, but I don't think it is. So Breitling sits at about the same level as Tudor. They swap movements with each other. They sell in roughly the same price range to roughly the same people. They're in about the same place on the Morgan Stanley Watch World Cup of, most importance. So they're comparable. And if you look at the number of articles those three brands have run of Tudor versus Breitling over the last 3 years, it's really interesting. Hodinkee has run, I need to look down for these numbers. Hodinkee over the last 3 years has run 156 articles featuring Tudor and 111 featuring Breitling. Monochrome has run 61 articles featuring Tudor and 8 featuring Breitling. Revolution have run 63 articles featuring Tudor and 36 featuring Breitling. That discrepancy, sort of from two brands which by every other measure are very similar, is stark. And it's no accident. It's a sign of a brand which is reaching deliberately into the enthusiast media, feeding them with a whole bunch of information, taking them on a whole bunch of trips, taking them to a lot of like factory openings and launches in Zermatt and all that sort of thing. And so as a result, we get 4 articles per masthead when Tudor releases something in a new colorway. Now, before I say another word, Tudor is doing nothing wrong here. Tudor is absolutely playing by the rules. Tudor is being really clever. They've wanted to be they wanted to have a really intense enthusiast kind of experience. They wanted to be an enthusiast brand. So I completely understand why Tudor did what they did. The problem is that the people that are receiving the Tudor money, people that are receiving Tudor's advertising or being asked to collab with setting up their, community forums and all that sort of stuff, are so uncritical of what they're doing that, Tudor gets a massive benefit out of it. That's fine, except I think it's also connected to why so many Tudor Black Bays are currently up for sale on Chrono24 and Chronext and Watchfinder. It is shocking the number of people that buy these watches, love these watches, flip these watches. So anyway, that's it. I'll wrap this up now. I've been Pete McConville. This has been me answering your questions. Normal service will resume in a couple of days where I'll get back into talking about something else, not just answering your questions. But thank you so much for the questions you gave me. They were fantastic. And as I said, we'll do this again in about a month. See you later. Bye. Wow.